So I'll begin with just a brief introduction. I know many of you were here last week. My name is Sarah Bodnar, and I've done communications consulting for many, many years in Mendocino County and have worked with a lot of small businesses as well as farms and nonprofits that work in the food and farming space, both as a kind of a marketing strategist as well as developing websites and video production. And a lot of my focus has been built on or has been around sustainability and businesses that are certified B corporations or have a social mission as the core of their business. And a lot of that has included food and farming. So I'm very familiar with working with small entities that are that have big ideas and want to change the world. And I'm specifically super passionate about agritourism because I feel like economically it's really important to rural areas to be able to capture and harness the value of these offerings for visitors. And it's also a way to create a sense of place and meaning in the world that we have so much in. I've been based in Mendocino County for a long time, and we have so much to offer through sharing the values and experiences of our place with visitors and to help support right livelihood for folks. My work presently is focused on cannabis policy, and agritourism is part of my work in that space as well. And I'm really excited about some upcoming legislation in Mendocino County that's actually going to enable cannabis tourism. And Mendocino is presently a leader in doing this. So I think there's a lot of exciting convergences right now around the agritourism conversation. And we have an opportunity to include all of our different agricultural heritages in this. So today, the talk is specifically about creating a marketing plan. And as I said last week, every single topic related to marketing could easily be a 2-hour workshop where we would run out of time. And I know folks, some people said that last week's class was too fast and there was too much, and there's always too much when it comes to marketing, but I've tried to break it down today to build on some of the things that we talked about last week, but really talk about some steps to creating a marketing plan. And a marketing plan, can be a 25-page document when you're done with it. So this can be a very detailed and robust experience. So we're not necessarily going to try to tackle all of that in this session, but once again, give some guidance for how to think about a marketing plan. And because we had a little extra time, I'm going to make a section of this interactive. Penny and Rachel, we hadn't had a chance to talk about this, but during the interactive session, or when I ask questions, and if people type them in, could you read me the responses?
Yes.
Okay, because that was a little bit hard for me last week to figure out how to see the comments as people were typing. So when we get to those parts, for all the participants, if I ask a question, you can just type the answer into the chat, and then Penny and Rachel can support me with reading those answers out loud. Okay. So today, I am going to use one of my dear friend's farms as an example. The farm is called Fortunate Farm in Casper. And this is a diversified small farm that has beautiful flowers. These dahlias have become part of their signature, as well as rotational grazing, a farm stand, of a full market garden of a bunch of different seasonal vegetables. And then they have some other agritourism elements as well, including camping for visitors. So I thought that to help make a big topic a little bit more digestible, I would use them as an example in kind of a fictional way as we work through talking about a marketing plan to help give us something to imagine in our minds. Okay, so step number one, and this will echo what I talked about last week with all marketing things, you need to start with a goal. And a good goal is a SMART goal. And we'll, as a reminder, a SMART goal is specific, it's measurable, it's attainable, it's relevant, and it's time bound. All of these elements mean that it's a goal that you can actually hit. A lot of goals that are more vague don't give us those specifics. So the examples that I've created here, and this is all fictional, these are not the actual goals of Fortunate Farm, but they could be. And these wouldn't be all of the goals also, but I wanted to give us a few that we could chew on. So one goal might be sign up 250 CSA box subscribers by April 30th. The CSA stands for Community Supported Agriculture. And this has been a major revenue stream of many small farms to have consistent subscribers. And it's been something that has also really boomed during the COVID times, that people are more and more interested in securing more of their food. They're doing more cooking at home. We saw a lot of CSAs sell out actually in the last year. So it became, even if people didn't have this as a part of their marketing plan or their business plan, it suddenly arose as an important thing. So this would, if we were looking at the season ahead, this would allow them to have their CSA subscribers locked in before the main thrust of the farming season. And perhaps that's what meets their capacity. They couldn't do more than that, but they could deliver that on a weekly basis consistently. So this, again, this is specific, it's measurable, it's time bound, it's relevant, and it's attainable. And a good measure of a goal is, will you know if you hit it? Words like more or different don't give us that kind of a sense of accomplishment and also clarity around a business plan. So another goal, attract 50 farm stand customers each Saturday from May to October, busy tourist season. These farm stand customers might buy totally different amounts of things. Maybe they don't even buy anything. But if with this goal, my objective may be volume, foot traffic, getting enough people in the door. If I wanted to focus on increasing the amount that each visitor spent, I would have a different goal. Average transaction for every farm stand customer would be, $25. And maybe right now it's about 18. So perhaps they're focusing on upselling, and that would change then my marketing plan. So it depends on what is the objective that you're trying to accomplish through this. Is it sheer volume, or is it a specific measurable increase in sales? And then another sample example is increasing Hip Camp revenue by 20% this year. Hip Camp is a platform that allows you to host campers, and it provides the user interface like Airbnb, but for campers and for people who are looking for more of like an off-grid, bring your own tent type of situation. And this is, in fact, part of Fortunate Farms' business model. I don't know what their revenue goals are around this, but it's something that has also experienced fluctuations because of the pandemic. Initially, nobody was traveling and there were bans on it. And then when people started traveling again, I think we're probably going to see a boost of these types of things, because it means you can be self-contained. You're not interacting with other folks. You're not even interacting with hotel staff or staying in a room that other people have stayed in. So maybe this would be maybe things like this will be both more pandemic proof and provide good revenue streams as others have fallen off. These are all examples of goals that would work in this context. In previous years, they may have had a goal of increasing the number of weddings that they were hosting on site. That's obviously not as good of a business plan this year. Okay. So next, after you've set your goals, know your budget. And I really can't emphasize this enough, how many clients I've worked with who come to me and they start by saying, I want a website, how much is it going to cost? And it's an impossible question to answer, because there's such a huge range of different websites you can develop, and substitute website for video. They want a video that they want to make. You can make a video that costs you $15,000 to produce, or you can make a video that costs you $500 to produce. And your budget is what frames the conversation and even allows you to know who you might be reaching out to and how much you can create with what you have and how to prioritize your spending. So I really want to underline the fact that your marketing plan is part of your business plan, which means you need to have a business lens on your marketing component, and it should be written within your business plan in terms of your budget and how much you're going to be spending and what you can spend and how that might change over the years. Without numbers, you only have ideas. You basically have a brainstorm until you start putting numbers to it. So it's the difference between having a marketing brainstorm of what we might do and having a marketing plan, which is what we can and will do now and what we can and will do later, and how we choose what we need to do. So it's common that, if you're embarking on some new enterprise, that you might not know how much things cost. You might not know how to prioritize your spending. That's okay. But having a chunk of funding set aside to explore marketing as a starting point is really, really important. And if you don't have a marketing line item in your business plan, then you need to go back to your business plan and start there so that you can have a conversation about marketing that's grounded in reality. Because I see a lot of people just want to start with, okay, we need to do social media. And the perception is that social media is free because you can log on and anybody can create an account and you can just start posting. Well, unless your time is worth nothing, which I would suggest to you that it's not. And a good place to start is valuing your own time. And that you don't need, any time set aside to collect photos or, prepare your content. Like that's just all not real. Like you're going to need to start putting aside some of your own time and ensuring that you have sufficient time even to execute a free social media platform. That has to be part of your business plan. So if that's your hours or your time to learn more about social media, that's all important. And then, the quality of your social media posts is really dependent on putting some resources behind them. And that can mean some professional photography, that can mean graphic design, that can mean someone who's just really skilled in using the platforms and knows the algorithms. And then it can include paid digital advertising on your social media platforms. None of those things are free. So from the beginning, realizing that you need to have an understanding of the scope of what could be involved in executing something well, and then having that be part of your business plan is really important. And to also ensure that you're spending the money in the right way. Like you might be totally okay with spending money on social, but if you're pouring a lot of resources into that, because maybe that's your team is really skilled in social, really loves to be online all the time, but your signage is really poor for your location. And when people get there, they're lost, or you're not upselling people appropriately because it's hard for them to see what the offerings are. Maybe your cash register system is clunky. It doesn't work well. You need somebody there physically to actually help them with the square thing that nobody knows how to use. These things all matter. So it's about also looking at, are you spending money where it's worth it? So starting with a budget with line items for marketing, and then being able to drill down as you explore the specific strategies you want to employ is very important. Okay, so I use the car analogy a lot because when people come to me and say, I want a website, I say, well, if you were coming to me and saying you want a new car, and I said, okay, that could mean a whole host of different things. Like I wouldn't know anything about what kind of features you need this car to have, what mileage you want on it, if you want it to be brand new or if you want it to be used, if it needs to be 4-wheel drive or not. And what do you want it to look like aesthetics, like what's the vibe you're going for with your car? Like all black tinted windows? Do you want something that's really friendly and bright red and colorful because that matches your brand? And then there's also function. And I chose these two vehicles to kind of illuminate like different aspects of the agritourism industry specifically. So maybe you're going to do tours and you need like a chic brand new Sprinter van to drive people around in, and that's part of your business. Or you're going for a really like old timey farming look, and you're going to do hay bale rides in the back of this one. Those are totally different aesthetics, both very functional. But knowing what your budget is and your goals before you shop is super important. And this is the same for your marketing plan. The marketing strategies that you employ should be based in the same kind of thinking. Like, you know how much money you have to spend, and you know your goals for what you're trying to accomplish before you start shopping for the thing, whether that's like a brand new sign or a website. Oh, it looks like we have a hand up. Question?
It looks like somebody can't see the slideshow. Can anybody else raise their, oh, they're seeing it now. Okay, great. I think you're good to continue, Sarah.
Okay, great. Thanks, Rachel. So these kind of steps are super important, because what happens a lot with marketing is people end up on the car lot and they haven't thought about any of these things, and it's super overwhelming, understandably, you know, because you're excited, you want to do something new, but you've never talked to a videographer before and you don't know. And I think that it's also important that, like, you need to remember that, you know, the first person you talk to might not be the best person to execute your project for you. But if you know your budget and your goals, it allows you to actually interview people. So many people would come to me and it was like they were ready to hire me before they even knew anything about me or knew if I would be the right fit for the project, and they'd only talked to one consultant. And not every person will be necessarily the right fit or match your budget or your goals. So I think that as small businesses or medium-sized businesses, whatever size you are, having this in mind so that you know you're talking to the right people and that you're kind of interviewing them to see if they fit is really an important step. Okay, so after you've identified your goals and your budget, then you will move to profiling who it is that you're trying to reach. And the marketing term for this is your target audiences. These are the people that you believe are the ones who are going to buy what you're selling, consume what you're providing, be interested in the information that you're sharing, become your customers, become your supporters, and become your super fans. These are your target audiences. So usually I break them down into two different categories. That there's the primary audiences and then the secondary audiences. And they're both important, but the difference is that the primary audiences are really going to fulfill your core, I would say this is where your core conversions happen. These are maybe where you have your higher margin products or services, where you want to focus the growth of your business, and the people that you really want to spend more of your resources focusing on. And then the secondary audiences may be more ancillary. Sometimes they're of the lesser margin categories for your products or offerings, or they might be people who influence your primary audiences, but you aren't going to put as many time and resources to talking about them. So let's just talk this through a little bit, because I think it's good to have examples of how you come up with these. So using Fortunate Farm once again as the example, I wrote down a few of what might be their primary audiences given some of their business goals and where they make better margins on their products or offerings. It's included here local CSA box subscribers. And I would suggest to you that this is not detailed enough. If you're really getting into profiling your target audiences, there's really a subcategory within a category here. That breaking this down further gives you better information. And I do this in a later slide, but I'll just reference it here. So CSA box subscribers do not fall into one category. And when you start looking at who your subscribers are, like literally looking at your list, you'll see that the differences between them might actually change what offering they're interested in. So you might have a family of 4, okay? And then you might have some retirees. The Fortunate Farm is located on the coast. There's a lot of folks who are retired. Are they going to be interested in the same box? Are they going to be interested in consuming the same amount of produce on a weekly basis? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe you have a working professional. They want the farm box because that allows them to not have to go to the grocery store. They can't make it to the farmer's market, but that's a lot of food for potentially one person. So when you start to look more closely at your target audiences, you think, oh, is one size fits all going to work for these folks? Will all of them want the same farm box? maybe, maybe not. And that could actually influence your marketing plan to become more nuanced. And maybe you come up with 3 boxes, and you have, you know, the family box, and you have the solo box for someone who lives alone. And maybe you have a different box for a couple, you know, 2 people who share the box. I'm not sure. I believe they only have 1 box, but I have seen this happen. I've also seen other things where you pay for a box, but you can come and you can fill that box with whatever you want. And that allows people to purchase only the things that they're interested in consuming. So the CSA world has really become a lot more nuanced, and that's been a result of being more focused on what your target audiences are looking for, and then how can you customize it so that people don't drop out of the program. And when you look at CSA boxes, there's been a lot of research done about this, is that the reasons why people cancel their subscriptions is because they're throwing away too much produce, they're traveling a lot, they're not using it, or the kids will just not eat most of the stuff in it. So it's like, then the adults are it's not exciting anymore, and the family loses interest, and they'd rather just go to the farm stand and buy the things that they want to consume. So that's where our primary audience profiles get really interesting, is when we start digging down and looking at, we talked about this a bit last week, what are the motivations, what matters to them, what are the challenges they face, what are they worried about, and how can you solve those problems in your offering based on your target audiences. Similarly, farm stand retail customers are also very nuanced. You may have locals that drive by and see the sign and pop in, and then you may have tourists that are driving on Highway 1 and decide, oh, they want to visit a farm stand. They're likely to purchase very different items. Your tourist might be interested in things that they can consume without cooking or food preparation because they're traveling. So they may be more interested in fruit or carrots or flowers or preserved products like jams and chocolate and wine and other things that they can take with them that don't have to be consumed right away. And your locals may be interested in different types of items. So when we break down the farm stand retail customers, we may have 3 different target audiences within there as well. You might have a farm stand retail customer category that is like people with kids who just want to come see the baby lambs in the spring. And if it said baby lambs on the side of the freeway, you might attract a whole bunch of more visitors just because you have baby animals. And so there's a lot of different types of ways to look at this. You might have a lot of travelers with dogs, and most farms don't want dogs running around on their farm. So this is another way to look at these target audiences, is that it's not just who you want to attract, it's also who you don't want to attract, or how you need to handle the audiences that might be kind of problematic. A lot of folks travel with their dogs. So part of the marketing plan may need to include how you're going to handle the families that show up on your property where you have tons of livestock running around and dogs. So maybe it's signage. Maybe you have an area where they can walk their dog and it's fenced, and then you ask them to put the dog back in the car. Maybe you provide shade cover so that people can leave their dogs in the car, but to make sure that it's safe. So target audiences is also about, like, who are your predictable visitors going to be, and how do you manage those? Wedding floral customers have been a big primary audience in the past for Fortunate Farm. They lost a significant amount of revenue during COVID when the wedding contracts got canceled. They didn't do as many venue rentals on site, but they did a ton of flowers. So even though this currently is not a main revenue stream, it typically is for them. And they have seen, some business in this area around elopements and other things, but overall they actually had to change their whole business plan and not plant as many flowers in 2021, specifically because this declined. So they're marketing less, and they're actually planting less around these. So that's an interesting change that they had to make. And then there's the hip campers. And the hip campers target audience, these are the folks who are using the platform Hip Camp to find the farm and to come camp on it. And it's a range of people, but I would say overall it tends to be folks coming from the Bay Area. It tends to be people with kind of a techie background who are looking to get off grid and come camp out on a farm for the weekend. they have been pretty low maintenance and pretty undemanding in terms of like they're cool with using, a rustic toilet or, a kitchen that is mostly outdoors and, not insulated and heated. So they're a kind of crowd that's been cool with roughing it. There's other types of campers like glampers that would fall in a totally different target audience category. That's not currently who Fortunate Farm is catering to because they don't have the infrastructure for that. So campers could even be really, really varied, but these hip campers, that tends to be the kind of folks that they bring in. And then EBT customers. And I'm not sure that this is a major primary audience for Fortunate Farm, but I do know that several farms during this pandemic time have made efforts to increase their access to food for low-income members of the community by actually getting signed up as a venue that can receive EBT cards on site. So whereas this has in the past been limited to retail stores or farmers markets, now more and more farms, from what I've been hearing and from a lot of local farms, is they're getting set up with these machines so that community members who come visit the farm stand or who want to get a CSA box subscription can actually use their EBT card to do so on site at farms. So not sure if this is primary, and this might be, may not be a high revenue stream for them, but it's really important to their core mission and their business plan to make sure that they're allowing people who are low income to have access to fresh, healthy food. So your primary audience may not just be about your bottom line. It might be all about also your goals and your mission as a company or as a nonprofit. In the secondary audience column, I included folks who are not really their primary focus, but they still do want to reach them. So as an example of how we see these target audiences in practice, one way to look at this is there information about all of these things in all of your marketing? If these are the people you want to reach, will they find information that's relevant to them in everything you do? So if you're looking at the website, is there information where you can read about renting the farm for a wedding? Not presently a part of their business plan for this year ahead because weddings are mostly canceled, but having some information about that in the future because people do plan weddings a couple years out. So having information about that available would be important. It's not something they're really going to be pushing through social media and other things right now, but it could be available on their website. They also sell through the Food Hub, which is a local amazing food distribution program in Mendocino County. And I know there are similar ones in Sonoma County, and they collaborate the two. I built the website for the Mendo Lake Food Hub that is based in Mendocino County, and they sell local food from locally sourced farms and also have a trucking system that moves the food around the county and delivers it. And I know that Fortunate Farm does business with the Food Hub. I'm not super clear on how much of their business this is. I know that overall wholesale is, lower margins than retail. So a lot of small farms focus on that and other agritourism type activities to subsidize. But I know this has been part of their business. So I put it over in secondary audiences. They might actually have it in primary. This might be more important than I realized to their business model right now. But people who are interested in purchasing food through the Food Hub. It also may be that those folks are primarily interfacing with the Food Hub. And so the farm itself doesn't really have to do a lot of marketing to those customers because those customers go to the Food Hub to see what's available. And if they happen to purchase through the farm, then they do. Educational tours, not happening so much right now, but this has been a very important part of Fortunate Farm's work in the past because they are doing a lot of really interesting work with carbon farm planning. And part of their mission is to provide education about regenerative agriculture. So they regularly host schools, other nonprofits, other farms, and these all become brand ambassadors for Fortunate Farm. Maybe they're not buying a single thing, but part of your marketing plan may be education, information, empowerment. And so these tours and these groups of people are super important to getting the word out about what you're doing, informing, creating really interesting partnerships, cross collaborations, leading to speaking engagements, many other marketing objectives that are not actually tied to sales. It would be completely appropriate to have a marketing goal that is, I want to give a TED talk on carbon farming in the next year. That's absolutely a marketing objective, and it would be tied to your business, but doesn't have anything to do with money. Pumpkins are obviously seasonal. In the past, they've done a large pumpkin field and advertised to you pick pumpkin pickers. This might be something they do again. And that's a really fun seasonal thing. So smaller audience, more seasonal, but something you could become known for. These are the types of things that really put businesses on the map. Everybody knows you can come pick the most fun pumpkins, and it's going to create memories for all the children for decades to come, and can become really important to your brand. And then neighbors and volunteers. So neighbors are important because when you're in a farming business, you know how important it is to have good relations with your neighbors, that they know what you're doing, that the traffic you have coming in and out of your property isn't negatively impacting them, parking isn't affecting them, that noise on if you're doing events or venues. So here you might not think like we're marketing to our neighbors in a traditional sense, but you really do want to consider them as an audience, and you might not be, marketing to them in the same way that you market to all your other customers, but communications, very important here. And having a plan for how you're going to manage communications with neighbors and to stay on good terms can really make a difference for a business that especially is wanting to have tourism on its property, and being just a good neighbor in general. And then volunteers. Volunteers have been important to many aspects of what Fortunate Farm does. Sometimes it's just like a day of clearing invasive species, and that might turn into an educational event too. Sometimes they just have too many potatoes to pick all at once, and people are invited to come help out. Or in the case of a natural disaster, Fortunate Farm has become a site in the past that housed people when they've been displaced from fires, and provided, they needed to have trained volunteers who were experienced with disaster relief, who are able to show up and help. So there's a lot of different ways that volunteers are important to an operation, and having a way to communicate with those folks, various ways to communicate with those folks, and having those plans in place to allow you to respond whenever you have, whether it's a potato picking emergency or if you've got a fire and communications are down. So I think just this one slide really illuminates how many different people you're trying to manage communications with. You might think you're just trying to sell some vegetables, but in practice, this is a whole constellation of different audiences that you're wanting to reach for different reasons. And this is exactly why a one-size-fits-all marketing strategy just doesn't work, because it's different messaging and different needs and different populations and different communication interfaces for all of these different folks. Okay, so after you've identified your goals and the audiences you want to reach and your budget, a plan is really where you match your strategies with the results. So this is the marketing plan, and this is everything that I've described so far could be written up into a document, but in terms of the strategy that you're actually going to enact, this is where it starts to come together. And oops, this is where I'd like to make this a little bit more interactive. I'm going to do a time check here. How long do we have, Penny?
Until 11:30. You've got 15 more minutes.
Do you mean 11? We have till 11?
Yes, until 11. I'm sorry.
Okay,
15
great.
more minutes.
So I often do this in a much less fancy way, where I just have like a chart on a whiteboard where I put goals on the leftmost column, and then audiences who I'm going to reach, and then strategies. So I typed it up, into a thing for this, but this is really such a fantastic exercise, building on everything that we've done. And you can do this on a piece of paper with your team, or yourself, just in, you can sit down and do this. You write down your goals, you write down the audiences you want to reach. You start getting really kind of specific about who those audiences are in detail. And then on the right, strategies or tools that you can utilize to reach those audiences. And you can even do kind of a line across all the way each one. Like, how am I going to reach local families, for example, under CSA box subscriptions? Is that different than retirees? Quite possibly. So for example, if I'm aiming to get these CSA box subscriptions by all of them signed up by 4:30 and I want to reach local families, I might consider putting up a flyer at a local Montessori school. That's not how I'm going to reach the retirees, obviously. So different tools and strategies. So for this slide, I'm going to talk you through, what I thought about for that first goal. And then I'd like to just make this interactive. And for the second two goals, who would the audiences be and how might we reach them? So we'll do that with the farm stand next. So you guys can all be thinking ahead of like, who do you want to attract to the farm stand? How can we get them there? So for the first one, the CSA box subscriptions, I want to use the Fortunate Farm email list because I know they've been collecting signatures over time. That they have events. They've got a bunch of names on the e-newsletter or on their e-newsletter list. So the first thing I want to do is blast out an e-newsletter that's saying, we've got farm boxes available for sign up, and put the link in there, the pricing information, and ideally be using some sort of digital platform. And there's a bunch of these. I have heard that Tend is a pretty good one, I think. And I'm not that familiar with running the back end of farming operations, but I think there's more and more, especially in the last year. So if this is something that's relevant to you, where you want to use platforms like this, talk to farmers who are using them and see what they've really liked and what's been easy. But ideally, this should all be digitized, that you don't want to be dealing with like writing people's name down on a napkin and then managing your CSA box subscribers. I was a member of the, I just completely blanked on the name of it, the farm box in Petaluma. Who knows the name of that? Great.
Bounty?
No, it was the local food distribution.
Feed?
Yes, Feed Sonoma. Thank you. I completely blanked. And they partner with the Mendo Lake Food Hub as well. And I could manage my whole subscription online, and I could also do add-ons. Like if that week I wanted a dozen eggs added on to my subscription, I could just go in through the digital interface. Totally fantastic. Made it like way more user friendly. And if I was going to be out of town, I could go in and cancel for a week really easily. I didn't have to like make a phone call, or, it wasn't a big hassle. So those are a few different things. I didn't even put all of those up here, but those are very important tools to consider as well. Using my social media to advertise around that. And for my social media, I might go out into the field and take pictures of the things that are growing. I might assemble an example of what a farm box looks like and about how much food could I expect to be in it each week, and what is the variety of things, and show people what that looks like to entice them to subscribing. And also let them know what the options are. Like, are there different choices? Are there different variations? Or is it a one size fits all box? Word of mouth is really big for these kinds of subscriptions when people are having good experiences and they share it. And that's a little bit harder thing to control. So, how do you encourage word of mouth? Well, one way you could is if you ask the people who have already signed up for a farm box, if they refer a friend, you can offer some sort of incentive, like refer a friend and you'll get a free Fortunate Farm t-shirt or hat or something. And that way you have encouraged them to go out and advocate and become ambassadors for you. And then they become like walking billboards for you too, because they're walking around wearing your hat and your shirt, which will then encourage them to tell more people about you, because they're like, oh, that's a great shirt. Where'd you get it? I got it from Fortunate Farm, where I also get my CSA box. So those things can really build on each other. And then if you're trying to reach, EBT customers who you haven't reached before, what are the different ways? I didn't include this over here, but this might be something that you want to advertise at the farmers market, where the farmers market managers are running the EBT food stamp match card transactions, that they can, maybe you have a sign there about your farm box and let people know that they could use their EBT to actually purchase a weekly box from you. You could let folks know who are helping sign people up for EBT. So this is through the county and their social services department. They actually help sign people up. If those folks are saying, if you can't make it to the farmers market, you can also reach out to local farms and see if they accept EBT. That might be an important point of marketing. And then your farm stand customers, like those are your already captive audience. They're literally standing on your farm. Do you have information available? Do you have a handout, a flyer? Do the people who are working the farm stand consistently let them know that you have a box available, that there's a limited sign up window, and encourage them to sign up? And signage that might be available there too. So those are all different ways that you could help hit this goal of 250 CSA box subscriptions. I don't know that we have like tons of time. So let's just do one before we wrap up the last step. I'd love to hear from the group if you have ideas about who your audiences would be in detail, and don't just say tourists. Give me something more. Give me something fun and creative about who might you be trying to attract to farm stand during high season. Do we have any chats coming in?
Not yet. We're encouraging everybody to answer questions and type them into the chat, please.
Okay, we have one, local hotel guests.
Perfect. So let's run with that one. How would we reach those folks? If you are a local farm and you've got You Pick Berries or farm stand with, things out, how are you going to reach the people who are staying at local hotels?
Flyers on cars.
Do you have time?
Someone also suggested, business cards at hotels or brochures at hotels.
Awesome.
So great participation, people. Visit the hotel, contact local hotels that have flyers about farms.
Super good ideas. So somebody's saying my avatar is a high net worth Bay Area resident who wants to escape to a U-cut flower farm. Perfect. Brilliant. It's really good when you get into the avatars and you like really embody these people, because then you're thinking about, okay, what's going to appeal to them. So, one thing, if they're a high-tech Bay Area person, make sure you're on Google Maps. Like, make sure that your listing is actually appearing on the map. So if people are just looking for what's available near you, which a lot of folks do when they arrive, they look at what's available, that you want to make sure it shows up and that you have details. If it just says Fortunate Farm and they don't see this is a You Pick flower farm, then they won't have any interest in necessarily looking into it further. So having more details, excellent. Having a relationship with local hotels, you might start off each farm season by bringing a bouquet of flowers to every hotel with your business cards and your flyers. So you've left an impression, you've let them know that you're there. You might even leave some advertising with them. Maybe they want a bouquet of your fresh flowers every single week. And every time you bring in that bouquet that's going to sit right on their front counter, it has, a business card attached to it that says Fortunate Farm. And then you've got your flyers underneath about advertising that you can come visit the farm and that you've got fresh produce and flowers and even weddings. So
somebody suggests invite hotel staff to visit the farm, perhaps host a luncheon on the farm for local hospitality people.
Great ideas. Like when you make an impression, they become your ambassadors for you. Yes, Rachel.
Someone mentioned paid advertising. I wonder if this is a good opportunity to touch on that briefly.
Oops. Yeah. Sorry. I keep clicking around. It's a great opportunity for that. A lot of visitors to hotels are going to do Google searches when they're looking to come stay. And you can, using paid advertising, actually pay to have your ads appear when folks are searching for Mendocino hotels. So they're looking for a place to stay. And then right above that, they see an ad for You Pick Flowers at Fortunate Farm. And, maybe it's like, dahlias, roses, peonies. They don't have peonies. But then people are like, wow, I want to do that when I come stay. And that's such a good example of digital ad placement and where it would be really valuable to reach those target audiences when they're searching for the very predictable keywords that they're going to be searching for, as well as the remarketing and things like once people have looked at something that it's going to pop up for them again and they'll keep seeing it. There's a lot of different types of digital advertising, but this is a great place to think about it. Any other questions or ideas?
Uh,
Okay, so what I want to say about this slide, this process, is this is where this is actually really fun and creative. And whereas the idea of writing a marketing plan could feel like heavy and daunting, this is where you get to really bring your ideas to life, and you know that you're on the right track as long as you're designing for results and you're matching your ideas to your goals. Like, this is where it turns from a brainstorm into an actual plan. And so if you do those first couple of steps, then when you get to this point where you're like thinking of the ideas, you know that you're being focused, you know that you have a purpose, you know that all of these are smart strategies because they're tied to what you want to accomplish and who you want to reach. And it's the difference between like kind of throwing the spaghetti at the wall type marketing and actually having a through line which says, this is what I want to accomplish, this is who I need to reach, and this is how I'm going to do it. And the strategies and tools is like mega creative and really fun. And this is also where you can involve consultants to help come up with the ideas. Like, you don't have to know all the answers. You don't have to do any of this all by yourself. But I think having this framework when you go into meeting with folks, whether you have friends who have a lot of experience, family members, consultants, having this kind of approach gets so much more value out of the discussions you have and allows you to have a lot of fun with the tools in a more purposeful way. Which is what I experience a lot, is people want to start with the strategies and tools, and without this background of what you want to accomplish and why you want to get there, it ends up being kind of a dead end. It's like everything's a good idea, but you don't know how to choose and you don't know where to start. So I think that this structure actually unleashes the creativity and can be really fun. And this is a great thing to do out in an open field on your farm, or, you know, with a big whiteboard, to have your whole team come together. You do not have to be a marketing expert to have really good ideas at all. Your farmers, your gardeners, the people who interface with your customers, your friends who own a hotel, like all of these people are the perfect people to bring into this conversation, and then do the brainstorming in a way that really, really works and feeds into your business plan. Okay, so the fifth step of developing your marketing plan is your branding. And this is very intentionally the last step, although many people want to start with this as the first step. When they think about marketing, they think about branding and they think about a logo. And what I would suggest to you is that your logo really doesn't have the direction it needs until you have considered all of these other factors first. Your logo could end up looking like the, Mercedes Sprinter van, or it could end up looking like that old farm truck. Like, you have such an ocean of possibilities available to you. And a good brand strategy is going to stem from knowing your goals and your audiences and designing something in every way that meets those goals and meets those people aesthetically and in a lot of other ways. I also want to discuss that branding is so much more than your logo. So I've broken this down into some marketing terms here, kind of as a final slide for us. And I've spent 2 hours just talking about brand voice, and I love thinking about brand voice and how we talk as an entity, as a organization, or as a company. So I'm going to be kind of brief here, but I think this is good framing to have. If all you walk away with is knowing that your brand is more than your logo, awesome. But the branding can be chunked into two things. I would say the style guide is what you see, the brand voice is what you hear. So the style guide is everything that's visual. And working with a designer, you would want to have somebody develop this full suite of elements that include logo, fonts, colors, your stationery, everything that's printed, a business card, a presentation template, usage guidelines, like how you display things on the print versus web, any sort of paper products and materials, graphics, and then your photography and video. This is all part of your style guide. And if you find yourself inventing something from scratch over and over again, you don't have a style guide. Like, every time you want to go make something, you're like, okay, which PowerPoint template should I use this time? Or which fonts, or which colors, or what's, if you're asking yourself that question in every little thing you create, or you're starting over every time you create something, it means that you don't have that coherent style guide as the core of your brand. And this is money very well spent. I think it saves you so much money to work with a designer to create all of this when you're developing your branding. Every sign you produce from that point on, you will know the fonts, you will know the look, you will know the feel, and then it's just about executing versus starting from the beginning and starting from square one every time. So that's what you see. And then there's what you hear. And brand voice should be consistent across all mediums and communications, and it should be constant. So this is how you come across. Like, it's not what you say, it's how you say it type of thing. It's a representation of your personality and your beliefs via the written word. It's your tone, it's how you show up in the world. For this section, I often give people a full page. Actually, I think it's like a few pages of hundreds of adjectives. And I have them flip through it, and I'm saying, don't you spend 5 minutes on this, flip through really fast, circle everything that really resonates with you in terms of an adjective. And put a line through anything that you really are resisting. Like, that's not your brand, it's not who you are. This could be anything. These are just a couple examples. Earthy, polished, warm, exclusive, playful, or campy. These are all adjectives, and each one of these could take your brand in a totally different direction, both from your aesthetic looks to, the kind of words you use, the tone you have on social media. A lot of times we just say, okay, let's go do social media, but we don't think how we should sound. We're just getting the info across, but we haven't thought about, well, are we polished or are we really earthy? And what's the difference and how does that sound? Having these conversations is so important for actually establishing a brand and in a consistent way, and making sure that everybody who's the voice of your company has consistency. There's going to be variation from person to person because people have, their own style and way. But overall, are you putting out the same tone? And with many of these, it's like, we aren't really aware of it, but you know it when you see it. Like that when it's being done well. Like the Clover ads. Those are historic, like for decades. Clover Stornetta, or now it's just called Clover, has been putting out the most ridiculous, punny Chloe the cow ads in Sonoma. And everybody knows them. Like you wouldn't see a billboard and not know who did that. And it's going to be stupid and silly, but that is their brand. That's so different than the marketing for other local dairies, for example. So they've distinguished themselves with that really unique look. And you know it when you see it, but you might not think about, well, that was an intentional decision that somebody made a long time ago to take the brand in that direction, and they've stayed with it, and that has shaped their whole approach to marketing. So I will stop there because I know we wanted to have time for a few questions, and that was lots of information. But I'm happy. Do we have time? I just realized it's a little bit over.